You're in a binding agreement, or are you? If you have a listing and you've gotten multiple offers, you may find yourself in a situation where one of the agents for the buyer whose offer wasn't accepted asks you if your seller is accepting backup offers. You could also just suggest to maybe the next best offer behind the one that the seller accepted that maybe they want to be a backup offer. But how do backup offers work? Is it enough to just send an email that says, hey, do you want to be a backup offer, or to send a text message or to have a phone call? Is that enough? My name is Sharon Smoot. I'm a realtor and a closing attorney in the metro Atlanta area. And today I want to clear up some misconceptions about backup offers. And before I get started, I just want to share a real world experience with you so that you can understand exactly how important it is as a real estate agent. Number one, to understand the forms that you're asking your clients to sign. And number two, to make sure that if your client's offer is going to be held as a backup, that it is actually a legitimate backup offer. So here's the situation. This was probably, 7 or 8 years ago or so. I had a listing and we got multiple offers on the listing, and my client accepted one offer, and the buyer's agent on the other offer that came in, and there may have been three, and one of them was a low ball that my client was like, oh, heck no. And the second one was a reasonable offer, but she just didn't like it as much as she liked the offer that she accepted. And when I let the buyer's agent know that her client's offer had not been accepted, she asked if my client would be willing to hold it as a backup. And I talked to my client and she said, sure. So I told the agent to send her offer again and include the backup agreement contingency. She didn't send it. So I drafted the backup contingency agreement because, hey, I'm trying to represent my client. She wants to hold this offer as a backup. Well, we need to do it the right way. So I drafted, send it over to the buyer's agent. She never has her client executed. I never hear anything from her. Well, the buyer that my client was under contract with ended up terminating during the due diligence period. So, being the diligent agent that I am, I go back to the agent for what was supposed to be the backup offer and say, hey, the property's going back on the market. If your client is still interested, just have her submit another offer. Well, she did. And my client countered her offer. I think, let's just, for argument's sake, say that her client offered $150,000. My client countered with $155,000. Well, this agent reaches out to me and she's like, your client can't do that. We were the backup offer. And I said, no, you were not the backup offer, because there was never any backup agreement that went binding. And when I tell you, this young lady argued with me and argued with me. Well, then the next communication that I get from her is an email. And in her email, she says, I spoke with my broker, and as I was trying to explain to you, we did have a valid backup offer. Well, that got me a little bit heated. And I knew just from how things had transpired, how the offer had been written up, that this was not a seasoned and well-experienced agent. And so I was just a little bit perturbed at how she came at me. And I decided, you know what? I'm not going to argue with this young lady. I'm going to just contact her broker. And this is a brokerage that has multiple brokers on duty. So I knew there was a chance when I called in that I was not going to speak to the same broker that she had spoken to. And that's exactly what happened. But I explained to the broker that I got on the phone, this is the situation. My client said, well, she asked if my client would be willing to hold her client's offer as a backup. I told her yes. I told her to draft the backup contingency and send it over, and that my client would review it and we would sign if everything was good. She never sent it. So I sent her one that was properly completed. Let me backtrack. Let me backtrack because I just remembered a detail. Initially, she didn't send it. After I requested it another time or two, she finally sent it, but it was completed incorrectly. And it was just wrong. And there was no way that I could have my client sign it. And so I reached out to her and said, what you sent is not correct. Attached is the backup agreement contingency. That is correct. Once your client reviews it and signs it, send it back to me and I'll have my client sign it. So here I am doing her job, right? Well, like I said, she never had her client sign it. And I certainly wasn't going to have my client sign a document that was clearly wrong. It made no legal sense, et cetera, et cetera. So when I'm speaking with the broker, I explain all this to her and I tell her, we never had a fully executed backup agreement. We never had a binding, fully executed backup agreement. And she said, well, do you have your emails and do you have the documents? I said, oh yeah, I have all of that. So I sent everything over to her. Little bit later, couldn't have been more than 15, 20 minutes later, she calls me back and she says, Sharon, you are 100% correct. And I have spoken to the agent and let her know that there was no backup agreement. And I have explained to her why what she drafted was incorrect and why you did the right thing by not having your client sign it. And she now understands. So it was a situation, guys. And I'm not even going to go beyond this whole backup agreement situation, but this is probably one of the most frustrating transactions that I have ever had in my 19 years as a real estate agent. And the frustration was born out of an agent who didn't know what she was doing, but thought she really did know what she was doing. So let's talk about how you make a backup agreement that is legitimate, that works for the seller and the buyer, that's going to stand up in court if it comes down to that. When you fill out that backup agreement, and the form has changed substantially from the time of this transaction to present, but when you are completing the backup agreement contingency, the first thing that you're going to have to do is identify what place in line this particular backup offer is. At the time that I was working on this particular transaction that I just explained to you, there could be only one backup offer. Now, there can be multiple backup offers. You just have to identify where in line it is. Is it the first backup offer or is it the 17th backup offer? You have to identify that. The other thing that you have to do is identify the contract that is in first position. How do you identify? The date, the name of the buyer, the name of the buyer's broker. That information has to be filled out on the backup agreement contingency. And guys, I am in Atlanta, so I'm specifically talking about the Georgia forms, the official GAR form, which is F604. If you're in another state, I encourage you to get out your backup agreement, pull it up, and read it thoroughly and make sure that you understand it so that the next time you have a situation where there's going to be an offer held as a backup, you're doing it the right way. Because if it's not in writing, it's not legal, okay? You want to do it the right way. So then the next thing that you have to fill out on the GAR form is when the backup offer expires. And essentially, that paragraph says something along the lines of, if this backup offer has not become the primary offer by a specific date, it will be void. Just automatically, there's nothing that has to be done. So that's the information that has to be filled in on the F604. So in the scenario that I shared with you, what had that lady done wrong that put me in the frame of mind like, there is no way that I can have my client sign this? Well, she had pulled some date for the contract of the primary offer out of her behind. I don't know where she got it from because she didn't ask me. As a matter of fact, if I'm remembering correctly, she had filled in a date that had already passed. Then, for the name of the buyer, and mind you, we're talking about the name of the buyer in the primary offer, she had put her client's name. And then for the name of the broker, there might not have even been a spot for the name of the broker now that I think about it in the old form. And then for the date that the backup offer would expire, she had put a date that was like 2 or 3 days away. And it's like, okay, the primary offer is still in due diligence. Why would you not even give this contract an opportunity to get out of due diligence? So she had just done it wrong. So again, I just want to emphasize to you that number one, to have a legitimate backup offer, it needs to be in writing. And number two, the form needs to be completed properly. And I think a lot of the times what happens is that some agents, and I don't want to say inexperienced agents because there are some inexperienced agents who know and really appreciate the fact that they're inexperienced. So they go to great lengths to read the documents and make sure they understand them and make sure that they're filling them out properly. But there is a segment of agents who just kind of do things in a slipshod manner, and when they do, they are potentially screwing their clients, screwing their brokerages, and screwing themselves. And you don't want to be that agent. You want to be the agent that does things correctly. You want to make sure, and I say this in my videos many, many times, that you are protecting your client. Your first obligation, your first responsibility is to protect your client. Your next responsibility is to protect your brokerage and yourself. And the thing about it is that when you protect your client, you're automatically protecting your brokerage and yourself. Those obligations go hand in hand. When you are filling out those documents correctly, you're giving your client good advice, you are fulfilling your two highest obligations: to protect your client and to protect your brokerage and yourself. So, if you have any questions about backup agreements, feel free to drop them in the comments. And if you found this video informative, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, and I will be back real soon with another video. In the meantime, I hope you have a fantastic day, a fantastic week, and I'll see you again real soon.